All right, welcome to Advantages of Building Prefab Right-Sized Homes. Very excited to have this session. It's approved for 1 hour in continuing education. It may be approved for your local or state-based contractor license. I'll be your moderator today. My name is Brett Little, and I am the Executive Director here at the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Huge shout out to everyone, all of our sponsors, Panasonic, Anderson Windows and Doors. Check them out for all your fenestration needs. Sun Intuitive, more energy efficient self-tinting glass, and Build Equinox, who has a CRV that actually can detect air pollutants. Huge thanks to our sponsors who support our work, allow us to do what we do, our members, and all of our board of directors, skills-based volunteers. We could not do it without you. So I'm real excited to be introducing Sheri here. Sheri's latest book is Prefabulous Small Houses, which profiles 32 of the most energy efficient and small, or what we would call right-sized sustainable houses in North America. Her previous book included Prefabulous World, Energy Efficient and Sustainable Homes Around the Globe, Prefabulous plus Almost Off-Grid, Prefabulous plus Sustainable, Prefabulous, House About It, Modular Mansions, and From Sandcastles to Dream Houses. She won the prestigious Robert Bruss Real Estate Book Award from NAREE in 2008, 2011, and 2013. Sheri's also a columnist, freelance writer, and speaker. And one lucky session goee today is going to be winning a free copy of the book. That's for those of you listening live, not the recording. And for those of you listening both live and on the recording, you're going to be given a 20% discount link at the end. So with that, I am super excited to have Sheri here on this topic. Prefab houses is definitely the future. We're talking about growing jobs, growing the manufacturing base. We're talking about homes that are designed and developed with massive waste production based on being done in the field. We're talking about green certification points. And as our skilled labor base on actual custom home construction starts to decline, we're going to see prefab homes start to take up that decline to ensure that the growing demand for housing is met across the country. So with that, Sheri, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I feel like I've been touting prefab for what it seems like forever, but after having written 6 books on the subject, I still find people associating prefab with double wides and having this unrealistic view of prefab. It's also important to focus on building energy efficiently. With this group, I assume I'm preaching to the already believers, but we can make a real difference in our need for fuel in this country and around the world if we can reduce the requirements of heating and cooling in the house. What I try to propose in my books is an ideal way to build, reducing the need for energy, using more maintenance-free materials, building in a more economical and prudent way, and living smaller, not uncomfortably small, but living with what we really need rather than being wasteful and building space we don't use or want to maintain. More and more people are saying that they want to live their life and not be spending all their time maintaining their house. Statistically, we know approximately 40% of the fuel that's used today is used for heating and cooling, and we know that there are environmental advantages to saving energy as well as financial savings, and the political advantages just continue. We just went through the issue with the pipeline, and if we can reduce the need for heating and cooling in the home, then our need for fuel will be reduced substantially. And of course, building a more energy efficient house is much more comfortable. There are still a lot of myths about prefab. Even though I've been speaking about this and writing about this for years, I still hear from people that they think they're unattractive. And anybody that has seen my books can attest to the fact that prefab houses can be beautiful. One of the requirements I always have for selecting houses for my book is that they be attractive. That's a question that I always get: how do you pick the houses? And so not only do they have to be efficient and sustainable, and in this case small, but they also have to be attractive. And I think all of the houses that I cover in my books are very attractive. And they are unmistakable. You cannot tell the difference between a prefab house and a site-built house. They're indistinguishable. People also think that perhaps they're built shabby or that they're a lesser quality, but in fact, anybody that has been to a prefab factory will be just shocked at how clean and efficient they are. In this picture, you can see that the cutoffs from many of the wood that's used in the factory are stored in bins, and they can be used on other houses. Also, people still confuse a lot of the more modern and desirable prefab houses from double wides or trailers. Not to say that those are not desirable, but they are a totally different thing. These houses that are delivered on wheels, they meet a HUD code, which is a lesser code than the universal code. They have metal chassis, which can never be removed, and so they're quite different. This is a picture of a double wide, and although it serves a terrific purpose and it's great for a lot of people, it is not about the houses that I write about. The houses that I write about all meet the universal code. Also, I think people believe that they're going to have trouble getting construction loans, and all of these banks that I've listed here on this slide have been giving loans for a long time. All of the people that I've been dealing with over the years have had no problem getting bank loans for prefab construction. So there might be little pockets in the country or around the world where banks are hesitant to fund prefab construction, but that is definitely not the rule, and in most cases it's not a problem. People also think of them as the old Sears catalog houses that, interestingly, in some cases you could buy for $19 and they were delivered by the train. But in actuality, a lot of these prefab Sears catalog homes and other companies, they're still standing and they're in very good shape, and they were great and the materials were terrific, and so that should not be an issue, anybody considering them being like those catalog houses. The reasons to build prefab are many. Of course, one of the important things is shorter construction time. I have seen houses that can be built in a month. That is not the rule, and I'm sure that anybody listening that's in the industry will say, you know, it takes a lot longer. But depending on the type of construction and where it's located, the construction time can be much shorter than a site-built house. I have a house that I'm going to show you in Australia where it was built in about a month, and there were two houses next door to them on either side which took almost a year to build. Obviously, they're less obtrusive to the neighborhood, excuse me, and there you don't have piles of dirt and trucks coming in and out and less noise. In most cases, there's financial savings. There was a study done in Philadelphia where the cost of housing was much higher than what people could afford, and they found building a modular house and a site-built house next to each other that the modular house cost 15% less. And they are prefab houses are more predictable. You hire somebody to build this house. You have everything planned in advance. You don't have change orders as you do on a site-built house, and so you have a better idea of what you're going to get in the end. And in many cases, they are much more energy efficient. In a study done, there were fewer air exchanges found with modular houses, 11 versus 7. The houses are built with more precision material, with more precision tools, and they, in many cases, have more insulation. Houses that are built on site are built from the outside in, particularly modular, because they need to be closed up so quickly. In a factory, a modular house is built from the inside out, and so there's a lot of opportunity to fill in more insulation around the outlets and so forth. They are built stronger and with greater accuracy. A FEMA report after Hurricane Andrew said that the modular houses stood up much better than the site-built houses. A friend of mine where I live in Connecticut said that she built both modular and site-built, and said she could never lift a site-built house up with a crane and set it on a foundation. It would fall apart. So prefab modular houses need to be built much stronger so that they can be lifted up and not fall apart. And also they have to survive the trip on the highway to get to the location. The houses are more precise. They are built with a lot of factories now have computer numerical control machines, which CNC machines. They are automated. They're operated by CAD programs, and they are just much more precise than you would find in a site-built house. Also, in a modular factory, the walls are laid out flat, and so that they are very square as opposed to a site-built house where they can be very square, but it might not be the case. There's less exposure of the materials to the elements, and this is really a big one. When you are building on site, the materials are sitting out until they are ready to be used, and they can get moldy and damaged either at that time or after they are put into the construction of the house. So building in a factory where there is the conditions are much more stable is a much better way to construct the house. Most builders on site will give either a 1 or a 2-year warranty, and on site, in a prefab construction, very often you will get a much longer warranty, and in modular, most companies now give a 10-year warranty. So it gives the homeowner a lot more security on their home. There are a lot of locations where it is very difficult to build a prefab house. The house on the right was built in Telluride, and it was a site that was difficult to get to, so it was a lot easier to just bring in the boxes than have to send workmen up there all the time for a year to build that house. It also means that there was less trauma to the land. The people that actually built that house were very environmentally friendly. They did not want to cause any damage to the property around where the house would be set, and so they were really happy to use the modular construction. The other issue also in a place like Telluride where there's skiing is that it's very difficult to find workers to work during the ski season. A lot of them want to stop working and ski, and so a lot of jobs are put on hold until the ski season is over. In a factory, people work 12 months of the year, and it doesn't matter if the conditions outside are too cold. They're not stopping to go skiing, and a house can be done much more quickly. The center picture that you're seeing is a house being loaded onto a barge, and this is very, very common today. I have several houses that I cover often in Seattle, Washington, where there are several islands, and a lot of those houses are built with prefab components because it is a lot easier to bring the components over by barge than to have to send workmen there and send materials over to the islands to build the house. The first picture is a house being set by a helicopter. I am actually not familiar with that house, but I know that in there are conditions where a house will be set that way when that's the only way to get to the site. There are a lot of environmental advantages to building with prefab. I mentioned earlier the exposure of the materials to the elements, so there's less damage to the materials. There's also less pilferage when materials are left out on the site. They're stolen and disappear. There's less scrap generated. As we saw in the earlier slide, there were cutoffs that were used that were very organized and used for other projects, and there are materials that are returned to be recycled. Metal is recycled, drywall is recycled, and in some cases, materials that wood that's left over is put out for the neighbors to use for their fireplaces, and in some cases, the wood is used to heat the facility where the factory is. Modulars, as I mentioned earlier, are built from the inside out, and so they're more precise, and there's less air infiltration coming in. Less fuel is used by the workers traveling to the factory. Most of the workers that work at these factories live close by, so they're not traveling long distances. Very often on site, the builder doesn't live in that particular area, nor do the workers, and so they have to travel every day to the site to build. Here, the workers are generally very close by. SIPs in particular have a very high R value. There's a continuous insulation, so there are no 2x4s that are in between the insulation, so it's continuous insulation. The people that are using SIPs love it and find it's very efficient, and there are builders around the country that only build with SIPs because they're so efficient. And again, as I mentioned, materials are not exposed to the elements, and less possibility of mold and of course pilferage.
Sheri, can you spell out SIPs for us?
Sure. That's SIPs is structural insulated panels.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, then materials are often bought in bulk by the factory, and very often they buy local materials. But one of the advantages to that is that the factory is buying the materials at a lower price because they're buying in bulk. And so hopefully, and in many cases, that savings is transferred to the owner. So there's also the delivery of of the materials to a site, which are delivered individually, and in here there's a savings in energy because all the materials are all delivered on one truck and they're delivered in bulk. The dumpsters that are in front of site-built houses often are filled with materials that in a factory would be recycled. All of the materials that you see in the dumpster are being paid for by the homeowner. So this is an expense for the homeowner that is totally unnecessary. In a factory-built house, there's very often no dumpster in front of the house, and they're saving not only on the cost of the dumpster, but the materials in the dumpster and the tipping charges that the builder has to pay when he delivers the materials to the dump. So this is obviously an extreme case, but here we can see the factory setting versus the on-site setting. And the on-site setting is a mess. There's materials around. There's it's a bane on the community, whereas in a factory setting, the materials are kept neatly and the house is just set in a very orderly fashion, not disturbing the neighborhood. There's also the disturbance to the neighborhood in terms of noise when they're building a house, and it could take a year. There's trucks coming in and out, and there's the construction noise, which, again, people don't have in a prefab construction. I went to see a house that I included in my book, and they told me the neighbors were all up in arms because they were getting a modular house set where a house had been taken away, and they were very disturbed. They thought that this was going to be a problem for the neighborhood. It was going to bring down the neighborhood. And then the house was delivered. It was absolutely gorgeous. There was no disturbance to the neighborhood, and I think the whole neighborhood were believers once that house was set. Then there are a lot of advantages to small houses, which was the topic that I covered in this recent book. I am really a believer in small houses. I live it myself. I just moved from a large house to a very small house, and I'm totally delighted, as are all of the homeowners that I interviewed for this book. The 32 houses, many of them were homeowners that lived in larger spaces and moved to smaller spaces, and they were very, very happy. They said there was less maintenance. It cost them less to heat and cool the house. I think a big issue is that it's much cozier. When there's a family living in this house, they know where their kids are, they know what they're doing, they're more together, there's more communication. Obviously, there's a lower cost to build, and there's more time for travel and for hobbies and for doing other things rather than for spending all of your time maintaining a large house. There's a big trend right now, which is the tiny house. The TV show is very popular, and I think a lot of people are interested in tiny houses. And I think that they are great for a certain population. You cannot have a lot of possessions, and they are not as safe as a site-built house. And there's some other disadvantages in terms of water source, septic, outside energy. There's no foundation, and they are built on a chassis. That can be an advantage if you move around a lot and you want to take your house from place to place, but there are also the disadvantages which can make it less safe. This was one of the first houses that I profiled in Prefabulous Small Houses. It's really a great house. It is a tiny house according to what many people consider in the tiny house mode, but it is a house that it's a small house that's connected to the grid. It's connected to the septic system. It is only 352 square feet, but it looks much bigger inside. It's very well laid out. It's in a neighborhood where not all neighborhoods would allow such a small house, but this is really a great little house. And one of the advantages to this house is that it has a helical screw foundation, which means that even though it's in a hurricane zone, it can still be very safe and will not be blown away. So that is one of the important, I think, advantages of houses that meet the international code, that they are much safer and can be constructed so that they will not be damaged in storms. This house was built by architects David Bailey and Stephanie Harrison Bailey, who live actually in a small apartment in New York that they said is bigger than their house. But when they want a vacation, they said this meets all of their needs. Often people associate prefab with modular. So when I speak to a lot of editors and people that I might just meet around, they immediately assume that it's only modular. But there are several types of prefab construction and lots of hybrids where more than one type of construction is used. Modular is, which I'm going to go into a little bit more, are boxes that are put together on site. And again, they're indistinguishable from site-built houses, as are these other types of houses, structural insulated panels, also known as SIPs, which are panels which are butted together with insulation on the interior. They can be OSB boards on the outside, they can be metal, and they are very, very energy efficient. Panelized construction is a type of construction where the parts of the house are the outside parts of the house are put together on site. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle where you would take all the parts and attach them. And then there are kit houses, again, which I'm going to show you some of those, which are all of the parts to the house are cut and numbered, and they are put together on site. And one of the advantages of those is that they can be shipped all over the world. That's Lindell Cedar Homes, which is on the cover of my book, is a great example of that. There's also steel frame homes and timber frame homes, often which are combined with panelized construction and SIPs. And as I mentioned earlier, there are hybrids which use several types of different prefab construction. The first category that I just want to go over some of these types quickly and show you some examples. The Art House was the first and only passive modular house that was built for the God, I've forgotten the organization, but it was built for somebody who needed a home and that was quite poor, and was built for them. It's a great little house. It's very small and compact and very, very efficient. Method Homes is a company up in Washington that builds very efficient houses as well as environmentally friendly houses. When I met with them recently, I asked them what if somebody doesn't want to use more environmentally friendly materials and systems, and they said that is their building method. So they will only build houses that are very, very efficient and environmentally friendly. This house was one of their earlier houses, and it's 1,800 square feet. This is a great little house that was in my current book, the Sonoma House. It was built for the mother of somebody that was living in the area. She wanted her mom close by. The house has many universal design features, and is a great little house. There's no threshold, so that it can be very accessible for her now and in the future if she is less mobile. This is an example of, this is a modular house that's in Nantucket, and it's an example of a cottage community. There are several houses all built near the water. It's kind of reminiscent of the old cottages that from years ago. It's basically a 9-month community, so they did not want to overrun the schools with more students than they could handle. So these houses are built for people to use for just so many months out of the year. This was a great house that was built by New World Homes, and it was a demonstration house that was built in Manhattan in the financial district, and it was just a beautiful house. It's rather small. It was then later moved to New Jersey, where it was sold and put on a permanent foundation, but it was very unique to see this house built and right on the water, right near the water, I should say. The second category that I wanted to go over was structural insulated panels. This was a house that was built in Peru. So these houses are being, all of these types of houses are being built not only in this country, but around the world. And solar laneway house is in British Columbia. This is a type of house that is built where the garage once stood. It is very energy efficient, very sustainable. It was built in the backyard of this couple's parents, and it has, again, everything that these people could possibly need, but the property cost them nothing, so they were able to put the money into the house rather than into the property, where in British Columbia the property is quite expensive. And the guy said that they're very happy because they can still get a home-cooked meal by his mother. This is a passive house that's up in Vermont. It's a fabulous house. It was on the cover of one of my earlier books. It was built with STIPs. It was passive certified. And you can see that there are lots of green features and energy features that you can see listed on here. Blown-in cellulose insulation, PV panels, triple glazed windows, solar thermal hot water, Energy Star appliances and lighting, and a laundry spinner, which is a different kind of laundry system that uses less energy, and it requires less exposure to the piping outside. There was a study done several years ago where a panelized house was built next to a site-built house, and they were comparing the cost and the efficiency and the time and all. And you can see here on the graph that there was a savings, huge savings in man hours. There was a savings in the cost of scrap generated. They saved on that, and on dumpsters. And obviously this is quite an old study, because the stick frame house only cost $21,000, which I don't know that we can get a house at that price today, but there was a $3,300 savings, which is at that cost very nice savings. So using a panelized construction is a tremendous advantage in a lot of ways. This is a great house built in California by a company called Minarch. They not only design the house, but they build the houses out of a specialized panelized system, and all of their houses are quite gorgeous. This is an Icelandic couple who bring minimal design to their houses that they build in California. So there's, they don't use more than what is needed, tile, embellishments, different types of flooring. They use the most simple materials, but their houses are absolutely gorgeous. This was a house that was surprising to me that it was a panelized house, but it's in Rosemary Beach, Florida, only 2,100 square feet, very energy efficient, and with a HERS rating of 52, which is really excellent on a scale of 1 to 100. And this is another example of a cottage community or a pocket neighborhood. This is in Concord, Massachusetts, and you can see on the right the whole neighborhood. What was interesting here is that there were 10 houses built, and they were all built on site other than the one on the left, which was the last one built. What the builder found was that the house was more energy efficient, it was built much quicker, and he said if he was building again, he would build all of the houses panelized because it was a much better way to build in every way. This is a house that was in Michigan, and when I called the homeowner to talk to him about his house and get some information, he said, "Why are you calling me? My house is not panelized, is not prefab. I have an expensive custom house." And I said, well, your house is gorgeous and it was built great, but it was built with panels. He bought it on a spec house and he had no idea that it was prefabricated, but it is a gorgeous house, and it is right on a lake, a very expensive piece of property. This is one of the houses in my current book. It's a great little house, and it uses timber frame as well as SIPs. And it was built on an island so that in Washington State, so it made it much easier to bring the components over and build there rather than have to build it on site there. And just going back for a universal element, there is no threshold in the shower, making it much more accessible for anybody that is in a wheelchair or a walker and needs a little extra help. And this is a great example of a container house. This is a shipping container that was used to build a house. This is a great example. It was built efficiently, great overhang to protect the house. And an interesting feature that they used in this house to open it up, this house is in California, is they used a garage door to open up the living room and add so that the dining could be used outside, and there's a lot more air. Here we can see that. And I asked them what happens if there's bugs coming in, and they said they don't have any bugs. So that was a great piece of information. This is a kit house that was built by Lindell Cedar Homes. Anybody that's seen the book, this is on the cover of the book. They are a great company. They build houses all over the country and all over the world. And because of the way they build, it is easy to get the materials shipped to different locations. They construct most of the components themselves. They use a lot of local materials. They're very environmentally conscious, and they are great at offering different designs, and they have a program where they have designs by great architects around the country, and you are able to get an architecturally designed house without paying the cost that an architect might might charge. You can see they use a lot of glass. Although they use this glass, their houses are very efficient, and this house is really gorgeous. It has a second floor with a glass partition where so that you can still see the surrounding areas, the great view from the second floor. Earlier, I did a book on houses around the world, and it was fascinating to see what is being done in different locations, from Europe to South Africa to Japan and Israel and all over the world. This house was really interesting. This is a house that was built where a Victorian house stood. It was very wobbly. It was falling apart. And so the owners had the house taken down. They donated the materials, and they put up this modern house in between two other houses that were very modern, which took almost a year to build. This house, I believe, was finished in about a month. And the interesting thing about this was that everything came included in this house, the stairway, the shelving, everything, all of the, I thought I had a picture of that, but all of the interior was complete. The owner said they were very worried that the staircase would meet when the second modular was set, and in fact, it was perfect. So this is a great little house and a great location. I wish I could show you all the interiors on these, because all of these houses are as beautiful on the inside as they are on the outside. This was, again, a hybrid house, timber frame and panelized in Austria. They are doing a great job over in Europe. This is a house built by a company called Baufritz, which is in Germany, 3,300 square feet, and they built a lot of these beautiful modern structures around Europe. Japan has a preponderance of prefab construction. Many of the houses in Japan are prefabricated. This was a house in Nara. A lot of the houses are, because it's so dense in Japan in the housing area, a lot of the houses have windows that look in rather than out. So if you can see on this house, there are not a lot of windows, but there is an opening in the center of the house. And a lot of the houses in Japan are built this way. Again, this is a very interesting house in Amsterdam. It was built in town. It's panelized with a cross lumber, timber frame wood. It's 2,500 square feet. It has a lot of ingenious kinds of materials being used. One of the things you can see on the second photograph is a tree trunk actually holding up the second floor. That was a tree that was being taken down by the municipality, and this owner architect bought this, took this tree and cleaned it up and used it for the interior of the house, giving it a very earthy look. He also used a lot of other interesting materials and that we don't even see in this country. So Europe is, and around the world, they are doing really great things with prefab construction. This house is in New Zealand. It's actually owned by a guy in California who travels to New Zealand to spend his winters, what would be winter in California there. It is only 538 square feet, but it's very modern and quite beautiful on the interior. And this was a kit house that was brought over to New Zealand. One of my passions in that I have established in doing these books is the Solar Decathlon, which a lot of people are still unfortunately not familiar with. It's a program that's run by the U.S. Department of Energy, and they get schools around the country and around the world to send in plans for houses that they're going to build, and then they are shown. We have a solar decathlon which happened for several years in this country, every other year, but recently there have been other solar decathlons in Madrid and in China and in South America. This was a house that was shown in Madrid. The Prefab was done by 3 different universities in Romania. It was modular with panelized components. All of these houses have to meet a certain standard for size, and they all are judged on 10 different categories, which include appearance, energy efficiency, marketability, and so forth. And I'm going to show you some other ones that were done here. This one was a New Zealand house that was shown in Washington in 2011. I actually had an opportunity to see this house. It was 800 square feet, a very interesting house. It was typical of houses that you might see in New Zealand. The space was used really great. One of the interesting features on the right, you can see a picture of the living room where in one of the walls where you can close it off was a bed. So if you have a guest, you have an extra space for them, and if you don't have a guest, you can just close it off and you wouldn't even see that space. This house is the Shore House, which was built by Stevens Institute. I did include a profile of that in Prefabulous Small Houses. This house was built to meet the type of problem that might come from a hurricane such as Sandy, which devastated a lot of the New Jersey coast. This house was built closer to the ground, which is not what is generally recommended for houses in hurricane zones, but what they did was they used marine materials to make the house safer and so that it wouldn't be damaged. This house ended up winning the Solar Decathlon last year, and it's an absolutely fabulous house with great features that make it safe and efficient even in the storm. And this was a house that was shown several years ago at the Solar Decathlon. It was built by 2 Massachusetts schools. One of the interesting features about this house was that the walls open on a kind of a trolley on either side so that you could open the entire house both on the right and the left. And what's interesting is the students during these events take you through the house, show you some of the things that they have accomplished. These houses are worked on by the architectural students, the art students, interior design students, marketing people at the school, and it's a great learning experience. And anybody that has an opportunity to visit one of these solar decathlons, I believe there's one next year. It's going to be in Denver, Colorado. So it's a great event and a great opportunity to see the technology of the future and to see what our future builders are going to be able to build. Again, this is the the book that I've recently completed, Prefabulous Small Houses. You can see again the Lindell Cedar home, which is really gorgeous on the cover. And I believe that that you can purchase this now at 20% off. That's what they tell me. And these are some of my earlier books that also deal with prefab and very energy efficient construction. So, Brad, if you're there, I'm happy to answer questions. It's been a little bit difficult for me to watch the questions while I was covering this.
Yeah, no worries. And we've got plenty of time here for questions. We've got so please put them in. One of them I want to get to here from the beginning, and I just wanted to kind of hold it till the end because I think it's going to be a fairly large question. Was the so what, Sheri, what do you know about the architect's role in designing prefab homes? Are architects and designers basically just being hired by these firms like to be employed there? Are they looking for and hiring, consultant architect design? Could a homeowner contract with the architect come up with a design and then give it to some of these prefab manufacturers? What are you hearing out there in regards to what the architect's role is?
Well, all of those are possible. Many of the prefab companies hire architects themselves who can design the house for you, but in a lot of cases, and in most of the cases in my books, there are outside architects that are hired to design the house. The great thing for the architect is that they do the design, and then the manufacturer will actually do the construction plans, so that it really is not then the responsibility of the architect, and that's really probably not the work that architects enjoy doing the most anyway. So they do all the design work, and then the manufacturer does the construction design drawings. In some cases, there are houses that companies have built that people like, and then they're adapted to their site. And then there are companies that have architects that work for them. But a lot of the houses in my books are designed specifically by an architect. And incidentally, all of those architects are listed in the book, and there's a resource list at the back of all of my books, so that if you like the way a house looks, you can see who the architect was, and there's a website for you to call on them. And there's also the manufacturers, and some of the materials and systems are also listed there. So it's a great resource for people that are interested in building their own house.
Great, thanks, Sheri. Actually, in one of those, that study that you referenced on the cost of that home, where we were all very shocked to see a $20,000 home. Actually, one of our attendees, thank you out there, gave us a website link, www.sbcindustry.com/FAD. I sent that out to the chat. Actually referenced that, and she said that they were only referencing the looks like they were only referencing the framing. So so don't go scrambling to find the $20,000 house. It was just the framing cost. So, so thanks for that.
And that is also an old study. So that
looks like it was 2015. So yeah.
Actually, I think it's a little bit older than that. But
okay. Well, it looks like she found one from 15, so maybe that one would be helpful.
Oh, okay. So. Well, that's good. Okay. I see there's a question about a typical foundation, and the foundations can be the same as any foundation that's used for a site-built house. So it can be most of the houses have a regular foundation, just like you would have on a typical house. The one in Florida had a helical screw, which was really a great thing for that particular location.
Great, thanks. I'm going to take us back to a slide that you covered, but maybe we can jump into a little bit more detail. It's on the lending side of things, if that sounds familiar. Am I heading in the right direction here? And you had a couple different banks listed.
Right.
Oops, I just passed it. So what maybe getting a little more into this, what are some of the challenges or questions maybe banks that aren't listed here would have as far as concern-wise in financing and funding a prefab home?
I think that's the biggest problem that we have in this country with any kind of issue regarding prefab homes is just the lack of knowledge. I think once banks know more about what prefab is, they're happy to finance it. There are areas in the country which make it difficult, not only for the bank, but like I had one house in Chicago, and the unions there made it very difficult for people to build modular houses there. But there was a guy that, an architect, he did cross all his T's and dot his I's and was able to get past the system and build a modular house in Chicago. I think it's just lack of knowledge. But most banks today are familiar with modular and panelized and SIPS construction, and they're happy to finance it. I don't think there is an issue. Incidentally, earlier on, I was going quickly over, there was an art house, which I mentioned earlier, which was the first and only passive modular house built for Habitat for Humanities, and it was built for a single mom, and the house was actually really lovely and cost-effective and efficient. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Oh, yeah, thanks for the clarification. I did want to keep following up on this mortgage piece because one of the biggest challenges we run into is the appraiser when it comes to green building anyway. And I don't want to throw them under the bus here, but, you know, they are not fully equipped with the knowledge to evaluate a green building. So how does that play out with prefab? I mean, is there any challenges to that?
For the banks in terms of prefab? Is that what you're asking?
Well, you know, the bank can't fund anything until they see the appraisal. So, you know, then it falls onto the appraiser to figure out how to value this kind of home.
I think that most of the factories can recommend a bank that they've worked with in the past and are familiar with their quality of work, and getting a mortgage, a building loan shouldn't be a problem. And one of the advantages to building prefab is that the construction loan period, which is expensive, is shorter. On a prefab construction, you get to the mortgage part of the loan much more quickly when you're building a prefab house. So I think the banks like that as well as the homeowners.
Great. No, good point. Thanks. Question in here, if 1 month is fairly quick and 1 year is long, what is the typical time frame for a prefab construction? I think you were just sort of alluding to that, but
yeah. You know what? There's a lot of variables there. That company that I mentioned in Australia was able to build that house and take down the house in about a month. But it's a very large factory, and I believe that they don't have problems delivering the modules. In this country, and depending on the state, you have to get a permit to bring the house over a bridge through different roads, and so that is one factor that you need to consider depending on the location of the house where it's being set. It also depends on who's completing the house. There are cases where the homeowners decide they want to complete the house, so that can make the process a lot longer. Typically, if you're building a house, you could get a house done in 6 months. The factory is probably the shortest part of the construction process. Getting the house to the homeowners and also the planning stage can elongate the process. Sometimes people don't know exactly what they want. It takes them a long time to sign off on it. So there's a lot of factors, but building the house in a factory can be quite fast.
Great, thanks. Another question coming in here from somebody who maybe isn't buying into smaller house just yet. I don't know. What are the common over-the-road transportation size limitations for a modular home in the U.S.?
You know what? I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but I believe it's different in different parts of the country. So I would have to check on that. I'm sorry. And I think that if anybody is interested in building, they should check with a local company that does that and find out what their restrictions are.
There was a question about basements. I know you talked about foundation, but do you see basements in these?
Yes, most of the houses do have basements.
That's what I thought. Do you find panelized foundations, and I don't know if you've heard of this product, but like superior walls to be a good option as it carries the modular concept down to the grade?
I love superior walls, and these are insulated panels that go in, and whereas a foundation you need to let it set for a while, these are already set and they're already insulated, and so I think it's a great system, and it has been used on several of the houses that I've covered in my books. I really like it because you know exactly what you're getting. You know what the foundation, what the insulation is going to be like. I think they're very efficient. And in some cases, people use those panels for the entire house, superior panels. And there are other companies that do that as well.
Great. And it is 4 minutes past the hour here, but we got a lot of great questions, a lot of great conversations. So we're gonna keep on going if that's all right with you, Sheri.
It's fine.
For the respect of the folks who have to get going here, for your CEU attendees, you should be getting an email here shortly with the details of your continuing ed. It'll have a survey in that. Most likely it'll go to your spam, so check there. GBCI, we're a little behind on that, so just shoot me an email if you need the GBCI reported. I'll get that out. For those of you watching on demand, so I'm not talking to any of you here today right now, for the recording, please take the 10-question quiz, get a 70% passing rate, and you'll be able to pick up your respective certificate from wherever you may be watching this in the future. Okay, great. So some more questions rolling in. Let's see, this is a two-part question that I just got. I want to make sure I get the first part. Can you give an average cost of the homes you've been showing us that have been delivered to the sites? Maybe you can break it down to a square foot if that's easier.
Okay, that is the $64,000 question that everybody always asks. And unfortunately, it's one of the questions that I can't answer because, number one, people don't always share that information with me. They don't tell me how much their houses cost. It also depends on what materials are used to build the house, how intricate it is, where the house is located. So there are so many variables that it's really impossible to give you one figure that will cover everything. What I can tell you is that the studies that I've seen have been that the cost will be about 15% less than what a site-built house will cost. But again, you know, every location is different. What materials are used is different, how intricate, and there are just so many factors that come into what the house is going to cost. Are you there, Brett?
I am here. So the second follow-up to that was what average additional percentage of total occupancy cost is the additional foundation, prep, permitting, et cetera? I know this is a big open question, but do you have any ideas?
You're asking what the foundation and everything will cost as opposed to a site-built house? I mean, the foundation.
We might have to ask for a follow-up here. Yeah, go ahead. No, that's not the question.
The cost of the foundation is going to be the same whether you're building a site house or a prefab house. Also, I mean, you're going to have to, in any prefab house, you're going to have a builder who's going to do all the connections, do the foundation, do the landscape, all the other kinds of work. So a lot of those things are going to be the same cost.
That main, Dennis, if you want to elaborate a little bit more, if that wasn't quite the answer there. But while you're doing that, I had a question because, you know, we were talking about, you know, right-sized housing here. So, and I wanted to add to that question a little bit. Can you talk about some of the different strategies you see that, you know, are going to allow the house to be smaller but feel bigger, feel larger, feel, I should say, feel large enough to do what you need to do, that may be pre-designed into a prefabricated home, and perhaps that we don't see in custom builds?
Okay, so I think that most people want an open floor plan so that you have some flexibility in terms of the space. And I think they have to be multi-purpose. A lot of the houses in these books, the houses in my books are, they can be used for different things. They can be used for a bedroom. The bed can be a Murphy bed and closed off so that it can be a playroom. There are less hallways. Hallways take up a lot of space. There's also, in these houses, the space was just designed very, very well. In the casita, which I showed earlier, they don't do a whole lot of cooking, so they were not interested in having a big kitchen. But what they did is had a fold-up table, a drop leaf table that could be opened up when they needed it, and also they put the chairs along against the wall. They could be hung on the wall so that they could be taken down when they are needed. So I think it's a matter of really designing the space in a really effective way. I personally live in a small house. The rooms are not large, but they are big enough for my needs, and there's no wasted space. And I think that's what architects have to take into account, not you have a lot of wasted space, which happens in a lot of larger houses.
Mm-hmm. Now, on that note, are you
spaces.
Right. Are you seeing anybody focusing on accessibility, aging in place, or universal design?
Absolutely. Several of the houses in my book do have universal design features. A lot of the showers today are built without thresholds. The knobs are made to be easier to handle, the doorknobs. In some cases, the dishwasher is in a drawer rather than opening up, which is more difficult to access. There are grab bars being used, and I would say that there are universal designs in a lot of the houses that I'm seeing today, because people might not need it today, but you want to build a house that is for now and for your entire life, or for many years, and so you want to have a house that will be accessible and easy for you to deal with into your older ages. You also never know if you're going to break a leg or you're going to need help in the house, making it easier for you to get around in the house. So a lot of houses now have a bedroom on the first floor, so that in case you're not able to get up to another floor, you have a place to sleep. So there's a lot of universal design being used.
Good, great, thank you. Thinking of the manufacturing process and the future, are any of these homes you're talking about, or any of the ones you see coming online, are they being 3D printed?
Are they being 3D printed?
Yeah.
I only saw one house in England that I had in my World house that was, what they did is they brought a machine to the site in a shipping container, and they were using a program to cut out parts that were put together and built on site. So it was prefabricated to a sort, but it was a very different type of prefabrication. I've never seen that again, so I can't really address that.
So one of our users or attendees actually saw a slide of yours that mentioned SIPs and cellulose and got the two mixed up, which are totally separate things. But actually, it did bring up something I'm aware of that's really exciting. Is I sent a link over to the chat to you all, but if you've ever checked out Phoenix Haas, it's a company that manufactures what we call cellulose SIPs right out of near Detroit. And so they actually get foam out of the entire equation, which can be a potentially toxic material or oil-based material, and they actually put cellulose panels into that, and we're going to be doing a whole session on that. So anyone who is interested, there are cellulose tips. That's not what you were talking about in your session, Sheri, but there are prefabricated cellulose tips now that do exist.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, cellulose is newspaper, so it's not foam.
Sure enough. Yeah.
And it is very, very efficient in terms of insulation.
And I think back to your local sourcing, most cellulose manufacturers are wherever they happen to be, sourcing local materials. So, whereas foam typically, unless you can get it recycled, which you can in certain places, it's basically a petrochemical that's coming from oil.
Right.
So, totally opposite color of oil, though. So another question that we had come in here. I want to make sure well, it's kind of a comment, but maybe you can speak to it a little bit. With all of these benefits, why are we not seeing more prefab homes? Where's going to be the uptake?
That is a great question. I get that when I go out and speak. Every time I go out and speak, there's somebody that stands up and says, if this is so great, how come everybody's not building this way? And I would say that it's because of ignorance. People just are not aware of prefab. As much as I've been writing about it, a lot of people still don't have any idea about prefab. They still believe these myths about prefab being an inexpensive, junky type of construction, and a lot of builders don't want to build prefab because they think they're not going to make as much money on it, so they encourage their clients to build it site-built. So I think that as people become familiar with prefab, that's the only way that they would build. Several of the people that I've profiled in my books have built prefab houses in the past, and this could be their second or their third prefab house that they're building because they were so pleased with that type of construction. So again, I think it's that people just are not familiar with it. Once people know about it, they build this way.
Going back to some of the other benefits of the manufacturing process, if you are using green building certification programs, this is actually something we did 3 or 4 years ago on a real project where the site actually decided to test out the LEED process within their plant. And so our raters and inspectors were able to go into the plant and do the inspection during the plant manufacturing process and then do one final testing on the site as well. And we were able to divvy that up, so if the plant was outside of the area the home was actually going into, one assessor or rater could assess the site at the plant closer to where they're at, and then the other rater could get the information they need to do the final assessment to make sure everything was installed correctly. And that actually cut a lot of time and issues, and again, they were able to verify many of the LEED credits were being met, especially some of the materials, which were just made it real easy because it was all done right there. So many of the green building programs, if there is a manufacturer that does commit to a certification, can significantly reduce costs because it could be sampled right in the manufacturing process. So anyway, this is just something we experienced to some degree. I know some of the other providers in the country outside of the Midwest where there's more of this happening have deal with this a lot more. I don't know if you've come across that at all or not, Sheri.
A lot of people are concerned about building a very green efficient house because they're afraid that it's going to cost a lot more, but there are so many things that people can do to build a house more efficiently that don't cost more money, such as the orientation of the house, the foundation that they're using, the type of windows that they're using, and so forth. And the important factor, I think, is that even if it did cost a little bit more to build the house more energy efficient, the savings over time is amazing. People have expressed to me, because most of the houses in my books are very energy efficient, and the homeowners always express what a savings it is in the long run because of their savings in energy costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Well, that's all the time we have. I don't see any more questions.
Okay, I just want to mention there was a question about there was a house that was built with SIPs, and then I mentioned that there was cellulose. I'm not sure which house that I mentioned that in, but there is a possibility that the house was built with SIPs and there was cellulose insulation in the roofing or in some part of the house.
Right. Yeah. Just added in later on usually.
Right.
So, yep. Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap up here. So again, one of you lucky attendees who joined us live is going to get a message from Taunton. We're very thankful for Taunton Store and Taunton Press for sponsoring this session and giving out a free book to one of you lucky attendees. So you'll be hearing from them. For the rest of you, there's a link down at the bottom left, and the link is going to be sent out to you through email where you can pick up by the 17th of February. So even those of you listening on demand in the future here, assuming it's before the 17th of February, you can pick up your copy too by 20% off there at that link. So make sure to go and check that out. And Sheri, where can people find out more information about you and reach out if they need to?
Okay, well, I have a website, which is www.sherikoones.com, and I do have an email address there, so people are welcome to send me comments and questions. And my books are available every place that books are sold, and there's always information on the website about the books. Particularly, I know Amazon has a lot of information about each book. And I'm always happy to answer questions when people contact me.
Great. Sheri, well, we appreciate your time. Thanks for all of you who are joining us here today. We'll catch you on the next session, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brett.
Yep.
Brett, are you going to stay on for a minute?